Hey guys, welcome back to session number 50 of our exploration of the Gospel of Mark. In this session, we're going to look at one of the most somber, history changing narratives in Mark's Gospel. So let's go ahead and dive right into the text here, why don't we? It starts in Mark chapter 15, verse 33. And it says, "And when the sixth hour had come, there was darkness all over the whole land until the ninth hour." We want to start here with this word sixth hour, this phrase. Now, the sixth hour, we don't know about that in our common everyday language here in the United States, right? Hey, welcome back, guys. This is session number 50 of our exploration of the Gospel of Mark. And in this session, we're going to take a look at one of the Hey guys, welcome back. This is session number 50 of our exploration of the Gospel of Mark. We only have 2 more sessions to go after this. Super excited about finishing this, but also bittersweet because I've been enjoying spending this time with you all. In this session, we're going to look at Mark chapter 15, verses 33 through 39. And in this passage, we're going to look at what is a somber, history-changing narrative that Mark records here in the gospel. So let's go ahead and dive right into the text, why don't we? It starts like this in verse number 33. "And when the sixth hour had come, there was darkness over the whole land until the ninth hour." I want to start with this phrase, sixth hour. Let's talk about some cultural context here. Because today we don't really talk like this. We don't talk about the sixth hour or the ninth hour, right? So we got to understand what this means in this culture. We say 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, right? Well, in this culture, the sixth hour is actually 12 o'clock noon. It's high noon in first century culture. And obviously the ninth hour would be, 3 o'clock p.m. Now, this is important for a very specific reason that we're going to find out here in this verse. Why is it important? Why do you think it's important? Look at the verse. Think about it. Why do you think it's important to know that what's about to happen is happening between 12 o'clock and 3 o'clock? If you said this word, darkness, then you are on point. You are on point. Darkness. There's darkness everywhere between 12 o'clock p.m. and 3 o'clock p.m. in the middle of the day. This is out of the ordinary, and there's a reason for this, because this darkness that Mark talks about here actually points to something else. Where have we heard this language before? Darkness, this language of darkness over the whole land. Where have we heard this before? If you did say Genesis chapter 1, you are correct. Chapter 1, verse 2, right? "The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters." So in Amos chapter 8, verse 9, also, if you want to take a look at that, it also talks about darkness there. "And on that day," which is this day, declares the Lord, "I will make the sun go down at noon, at the sixth hour." This is Amos writing thousands of years before Jesus, right? This is Amos writing way before Jesus, and he talks about the sun going down at noon and darkening the earth in broad daylight. This is pointing to that specific prophecy in the book of Amos here in Mark. a long time after Amos wrote his text. So just as there was darkness before creation in our text, there is darkness before a recreation. A recreation is about to occur in our text. Through his death, Jesus is about to usher in a new creation. So this reference to darkness is actually foreboding, but it also is hopeful, because before darkness, especially in Genesis, right before everything happens, there's darkness, but the Spirit of God is hovering, and God in Genesis is about to create the earth. And here in this text, Mark is pointing us back to Genesis and saying that God is about to do a new thing. He's about to do a recreation. One commentator says that darkness was a clear sign to people that they had rejected the light of the world. Think about that. This darkness was a clear sign to folks that they had rejected the light of the world. This is such a profound statement. Here is the light of the world in the midst of these people, and they reject him. They reject him. Paul puts it like this in Ephesians 5, Paul puts it like this in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 8. For at one time you were darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. There's a time in your life and in my life where we walked in darkness, but now we walk as children of light in this world that needs our lights. The text goes on to say this. And at the 9th hour, Jesus cried with a loud voice, Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani. Now, you probably don't want to say that yourself, but it's Aramaic. It's actually not Hebrew. It's Aramaic, which is one of the languages that the Jewish folks spoke. And Mark chose to put the Aramaic language here in the text. So let's go ahead and look at that particular phrase. So since verse 2 in this chapter, you notice one thing. If you go back and look up through verse 2 all the way down to this verse, Jesus has been silent up until this point. But here in this passage, in this text, he cries out. And again, hopefully you realize that this ain't English. It's Mark translating or transliterating the Aramaic phrase that Jesus mentions here for the Greek people that he's writing to. Remember, Mark's gospel is a Greek gospel. He's writing it to Greek people who don't know Aramaic. So he's transliterating that phrase for them, right? And he tells them the meaning of the phrase, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? Now, this is important because Jesus is actually quoting an ancient text here. Do you know what that text is? Psalm 22, right? Go back and look at it. You can pause it. Go take a look at it now. The first verse says this. It says, my God, why have you forsaken me? Now, this is David in Psalm 22, writing hundreds of years, again, prophetically hundreds of years before Jesus. But as you read through Psalm 22, you'll see that the psalm reflects exactly what Jesus is about to go through. And he inaugurates it with the initial words from Psalm 22, my God, why have you forsaken me? Even down to the crucifixion, which wasn't around in David's day. But here, Jesus is saying, hey, this psalm, I am a fulfillment of Psalm 22. If you go look at it, every verse is about Jesus there. So go and take a look at that. You can pause it here, go take a look at it and see all the parallels that are happening there and here in our text. And then here's what happens next. Someone ran and filled a sponge with sour wine, put it on a reed, and gave it to him to drink, saying, wait, let's see whether Elijah will come and take him down. And Jesus uttered a loud cry and breathed his last. I want to look at a couple of things here real fast here. Now, there's a lot of fulfillment going on in this passage, okay? Someone gave him a drink. If you look at Psalm 69, again, another psalm being fulfilled here with Jesus, it says, they gave me poison for food, and for my thirst, they gave me sour wine to drink. And here's another thing. Why are they asking about Elijah? Jesus didn't say anything about Elijah, did he? Well, here's the thing. The Aramaic word for God is Eloi, right? But the Aramaic word for Elijah is Eli without the O. So they could have misheard what he was saying from the cross and saying that he is calling Elijah, which might make sense, right? Why? Because Elijah was taken up into a whirlwind in heaven, right? He didn't have to suffer himself. So maybe God here, maybe these people are saying, maybe God would spare Jesus the same way that he spared Elijah. Maybe Elijah can come and take him up in that same whirlwind that he was taken up in. But remember Jesus' words in Mark 10, verse 45. The Son of Man did not come to spare his life, but to give his life as a ransom for many. So he wasn't looking for Elijah to come and save him. He was calling out to God because God was forsaking him in this very moment for you and for me. And the text here said Jesus breathed his last. But here's the interesting thing. For Mark here, this isn't the end of his gospel. Jesus breathed his last. It's done for. The disciples have no hope. This isn't the end. This is actually just the beginning. He's getting ready to take the reader somewhere, and it actually starts with two specific events here in this last verse, these last couple of verses here. The first event here is the curtain. It says that the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. Now, you got to know this about the temple to understand the significance here. There are two curtains in the temple. One is in the court of Israel, and it contained the lampstand, the table, and the bread, right? And the other is in the Holy of Holies, where the presence of God resides. So for the people of Israel, this curtain was a symbolic divide for them. It divided a holy God from an unholy people. And in this moment, at Jesus' death, that divide tears into two from top to bottom. Now, this isn't the first time that Mark mentions something being torn in the gospel. But you'd have to go all the way back to one of our earlier sessions to remember that. Do you remember what that was? It was Jesus's baptism, right? The heavens were torn. Same word, same Greek word there. And God declared Jesus to be his son. Well, look at here. Look what happens here. The heavens are torn in the Gospel of Mark chapter 1, and the temple veil is torn here. And God speaks when the heavens are torn. And look who speaks here when the temple curtain. Look who speaks here when the temple curtain is torn. It's a centurion, right? And look at what he says. The same thing that God declares in the beginning of the gospel. Jesus is the Son of God. Do you see the connection there? One tearing opened up heaven. This tearing opened up God's temple or his celestial dwelling to us. You see that? Do you see the connection that Mark is making here? No other human being in the Gospels got this right up until this point. And it takes this centurion who's not even a Jewish person, who's not even a disciple, to confess Jesus as the Son of God. It makes sense because Mark's gospel is a Gentile gospel. It's not a gospel for the Jews. So he's saying this man got it right while the disciples misunderstood. They didn't know who Jesus was. Here at the end of the gospel, here's a man who needed the gospel more than anything. And he declares the same thing that God declares, that Jesus here is the Son of God. And here's the key takeaway I want you to have for this session. Okay. Jesus himself was forsaken so we wouldn't have to be. That is the true essence of the gospel. When Jesus utters these words, my God, why have you forsaken me? He's saying to God, I am going to be forsaken so that John won't be forsaken, so that you who are listening won't be forsaken. That is the gospel. And that is the gospel that he wants us to share with this world that is walking in that darkness that happened from 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock. May we all think through the implications of these words. Jesus was forsaken so we wouldn't have to be. All right, folks, that's been session number 50 of our exploration of the Gospel of Mark. Next go around, we're going to look at session number 51 and look at what happens at the tomb. It's going to be awesome. Looking forward to it. Grace and peace to you all.